Today on the Servant Leadership Podcast, we sit down with Bern Bertsche, former owner and president of Camcraft, a world-class precision machining company that has grown into a trusted partner for some of the largest automotive, aerospace, and industrial manufacturing companies around the world, including SpaceX, Caterpillar, Cummins, Bosch, and more. For Bern, success was never just about business. It was about people, investing in Camcraft's employees, leading with generosity, and using the company as a force for good in the community and around the world. In this episode, Bern shares the incredible story of how he risked everything to buy Camcraft and what it means to build a company that outlasts you. If you've ever wondered how to grow a business, learn generosity, or leave a legacy that truly matters, this conversation is for you. All right, Bern.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining.
Glad to be here.
This is super exciting. Obviously, I know your story, but for our audience, they don't know any of your journey. Mm-hmm. So share a little bit about how you got into Camcraft.
I joined the company about 10 years after I got out of college. So I had worked in a number of companies prior to that and had an opportunity to go to work for the company in 1974. My father and the owner of the company were good friends, and it just happened the company I was with was moving to New York. I didn't want to move, and they were out playing golf together, and my dad happened to mention, hey, Bern's going to be looking for a job, and which my father never let me forget. At any rate, it just mentioned it. It wasn't like he was looking for a job, but Bud had just bought out his partner, felt like maybe he had a few bucks he could spend. And I had an accounting background, a CPA. He didn't have an accountant. And so I joined the company in 74 and loved being in manufacturing. It was something I'd been in before, loved the smells and the sounds and just seeing things made. I mean, it just was so cool. And so through the 70s, I was doing primarily manufacturing things, accounting, and then in 1981, the owner died. Would you like me to go on?
Yeah.
Okay.
What then?
Yeah. What then? So at that point, I was in a position where they needed me to take over the company. I had been half running it. The owner's health was bad, and so while he was down in Florida, I would take on more responsibility. He'd come back up from Florida and change everything I had done while he was gone. And but at any rate, we had a good relationship. He was a good guy. He started the company in 1950 and did a wonderful job of building the company. So when he died, the family didn't have anyone else to come in to run the company, so I began to fully run it. The problem became after a few years that they really weren't sure what they wanted to do. The daughter and son and mom didn't know if they wanted to keep the company. They did want to keep it initially just as a legacy to her husband. But as years went on, they weren't willing to invest in the company. And one thing about the business was it had a lot of old equipment. It had a good customer clientele, good people, but our machinery was continually getting older. And I could understand it. They didn't want to invest much in the future, not knowing whether they were going to keep the company. So by 1986, I realized that I had to do something else. This wasn't going to go anywhere. So I talked to the owner, the widow, and said, I've got to go find something else to do. And she said, well, Bern, you can't just leave. You've got to run the company. I said, well, I'll stay as long as I can, but I need to find another job. Well, I happened to be in a group called the President's Forum back then with presidents of other companies. And I remember telling the guys that I was quitting. They couldn't believe it. I said, you've got 5 kids. You don't have a job. Why are you doing this? And I said, I know I need to do it. I've got to get on with life. And one of the guys, good guy, was willing to offer me a job in his company. He felt so sorry for me. He said, you can come and run my plant in Ohio. So at least I had something. Well, at any rate, we tried to sell the company. That was the idea of the family then, since I wasn't going to stay. And it's difficult to sell a company when you don't want your customers to know you're thinking of selling, obviously. And so we kept it quiet, but we didn't get much action. We had a few people interested, and that never panned out. So I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but one of the board members, a guy I'll never forget, suggested to me that I buy the company. I kind of laughed. I said, well, how am I going to do that? I don't have the money to buy the company. He said, I've done this before. Leverage buyouts are popular, and I think I can help you to put this together. I've got a friend of mine, Hank Wisniewski, who's been in the CPA world and done these things. So why don't we talk to him? Well, that started the process maybe in August of 1986. And through the next couple of months, we kept talking about how this could happen. I was talking to banks about how they could lend me the money. And initially, everything went wrong. The bank decided they didn't want to give me the money, which they had committed to. The accountant and attorney who worked for the family really didn't want me to buy the company. Matter of fact, they offered to the owner that they would buy the company and they could help her then to eventually sell it. I didn't know that at the time, but I found out later in the story that that's why I had some of the difficulties I did. But at any rate, we went through the next couple of months. I found a bank, Lakeshore National Bank, that was, they didn't even look at any of the numbers. I met I met the loan officer out at the Bobolink Golf Course, beautiful golf course. And we sat at lunch on a Saturday, and we talked for a while. And I said, I think we can do this. And the company was in good shape, and we had a good balance sheet and so forth. But at any rate, they came up with, the agreement for us. So by this time, of course, the owner had agreed that I could try and buy the company. And so we had set a date of December 31st to make the finish off our purchase. Well, we had to do it in the year because in 1986 there were some tax laws changing, and we actually had an employee stock ownership plan of about 30% of the company's stock that was held by the employees, and I had to buy that along with the owner's shares. Well, if you didn't get this done by the end of the year, there were more tax consequences. So we decided to do the closing on December 30th, and that just to give us a little bit of leeway in case anything went wrong. So we had my attorney along with the bank and the bank's attorneys, and came to the closing on the 30th. I remember had a bottle of champagne in his briefcase. I'll never forget that. I had this bottle ready to celebrate. Well, the day goes on, and the lawyer for the owner never showed up. And I couldn't imagine that this could happen, but he didn't come. So he called later in the day, and he decided that, I don't know if he did it alone, but he said, you need to put up more money. And I want another $100,000 from you. Well, actually, I really didn't blame him. At this point, all I had put in was whatever I had in my profit sharing was about $50,000. So I was buying this company for $3.5 million with $50,000, which probably was not really appropriate. But at any rate, so I had no way to get another $100,000. I thought, well, it's done. But one of the bankers said, well, what about your house? What about the mortgage on your house? And I said, well, there is a mortgage, but there's quite a bit of equity in it. And he said, well, I'll send somebody out this afternoon, and we'll look at, this is December 30th, look at the house, see if we can loan you $100,000. And miraculously, and really miraculously, they came back and they said, yeah, we can give you another $100,000. So the next day I've got now the $150,000, and my attorney's there, with the warm bottle of champagne in his briefcase, and the guy doesn't show up again. And I could not believe it. I mean, it's like 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm still waiting. I can remember pacing the floor outside of the conference room, thinking, Lord, it's going to go one way or another, and either I'm going to be out of work or this business is going to be sold to me, which was unbelievable in itself. Well, one of the bankers called this attorney's boss, and they got him over there, and we did get the papers signed. Now, my wife, Jeannie, somehow believed that I would never put a second mortgage on our house. I don't know if I had said that. I didn't remember saying that. So from the time I asked her to sign the papers for the second mortgage to the time we finished everything with the sale, she hadn't talked to me. I mean, she had signed the papers, but had no use for anything we were doing. And I understand that. A woman thinking my house is up for sale, I mean, it could be up for sale. But at any rate, so we got papers taken care of. And as of that evening, December 31st, I own the company.
Wow. Was that a good feeling or a bad feeling at that point?
No, it was really a good feeling. I mean, the reason why I had decided to leave the company was because I really sensed I didn't know how badly I wanted it. I was running the company even before I thought of buying it. I never thought of buying it prior to when it came to that. But I felt like it was almost an idol in my life. I was so concerned and I wanted it so much. And that's why I realized I had to get out of it. I had to get away from it. So when you give something up and the Lord gives it back to you way more than you expected. So I was thrilled. And the people in the company, when they found out I had bought it, were much relieved because they didn't know what could happen if somebody else came in and bought the company. So it was I'd been in the company for a number of years. They knew me. They knew what I was going to do, or they thought they did. And so it was a good time.
Your pressure level went from already high leading the company to now you're owning it and responsible for multiple millions of dollars that you've now put up for this business. What was that like in terms of dealing with that change of pressure that next year?
What was interesting was that in that next year, we developed some new business that I didn't expect to get. A company, one of Eaton's divisions had bought up. Did they buy Briggs & Stratton? I can't recall if it was Briggs & Stratton. At any rate, Eaton was looking for a new supplier, and we happened to have all the machinery that they needed to do the work that they required. And so that was such a relief to me. The other business was still coming in, but we were staying steady, and then this new business began to add some profits to the company. And there was that sense that we had a good thing ahead of us because the prior owner had kept things pretty much under lock and key, and then the family had as well in not knowing what they wanted to do. And so when I was able to start buying machinery, I was still buying old machinery, but not as old as what we had out on the factory floor.
With that journey of, you used to have old machinery. Now, if somebody walked through Camcraft, it's always the newest, the most state of the art. When did that change in your mind from buying old machinery and having old machinery to really becoming cutting edge?
Yeah, one of the things I did initially was to develop a good board of advisors. And for anybody that is running a company, I'm so surprised, you probably are, at how many people don't take good counsel and don't have people around them that can give them straight answers. And so we have always had good men, Christian men on our board. So we had moved into a new plant. I didn't buy the plant when the old factory. It was an old building and didn't want it. But we moved into a new building in 1994. And one of the board members, after I had toured them around, I was so proud of the place. And he said, Bern, this is really a nice looking place, but it's all old machinery out here. Well, to me, it wasn't old. If it was 10 years old, it was almost new. And he said, you need to start modernizing. One of our board members, Klaus Fuss, worked for a German, real high-class German manufacturer of machines. And he helped us to think through all of that. And that began the journey. And then I was able to travel Japan and throughout Europe looking at other companies that were really doing well, even companies around Chicago that were way beyond us. I couldn't imagine us ever getting there. But, you see what's possible and you begin to think, well, maybe we can do it. And so little by little over the last, let's see, I bought it in 86. This is almost 40 years later, isn't it? So yeah. It's taken us a while. But in the last 20 years, we've really made some gains that are quite unbelievable when I walk through the plant today.
It is interesting because this small little company at one point is now one of the world's leading manufacturing companies, right? It's an interesting journey. When you do walk through it, what do you think? Like, it is so different, and it's got to be fun to look back and think you were a part of this.
Yeah, when people say you must be so proud of this, it's not pride. It's amazement in some ways. It's thankfulness to the Lord with the great people that we brought in the company. I mean, there's so many that I look at that somebody asked me a while ago. He said, "Well, why did you hire me?" It was Mark Bossert, I think, who was super talented engineer. And I said, I knew the girl you married, and she was terrific, like you. And I knew that you had the right attitude and approach to business, and he made all the difference in the world for us. So to me, it's just gratefulness. It's quite incredible what the company has done and continues to do. It's a tough market, but it's one that we enjoy the fight in, and we're in a position, I think, to win some of the battles.
With those battles, the sales process for selling in your industry is not like your typical sales process where it's just a quick conversation and a small bit of money exchanging. What's the sales process look like for a large manufacturing company, and what are you selling, and who are the companies that you're selling to?
Yes, well, our customers today are much different than they were some years ago. We went through the 80-20 analysis some years ago and realized that we had customers that we weren't good for, and we weren't good for them. And so we began to remove through the right process customers that we thought we were either not doing the right kind of work for, or we weren't going to get anywhere with them. And as we went through that, we found that we could concentrate more on more difficult work. So we began to go after work that others couldn't do. And we had people like Mark and others in the company that were able to challenge the company to buy the right machines. And so that started the process. And so, you take it a step at a time. So we started to do very difficult hydraulic work that most companies weren't doing. And then a lot of them started to get into it. And so we looked for other things. We got into the automobile area, vehicles, trucks, engine parts, which were very difficult to make. And more recently, we've moved into the aerospace area, which has been very interesting, not easy to get into, but through God's hands, I can't imagine anything else. We started doing business with SpaceX 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, and have developed a great relationship and doing a lot of work with them, which has provided us with opportunities to get into other companies, because if you can do it for SpaceX, you can do it for almost anybody else.
Yeah.
So the opportunities come from some of the shows we do, where we'll be at a show that is related to aerospace and show what we've been able to accomplish with our own people and our own machines and so forth. Or it can be done just through other companies that help us find good companies. But it takes time. I mean, it's probably a year to 2 years between opening the doors and even getting your first order.
That is crazy. That takes a lot of planning and consistency of a strategic plan.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think is interesting, because there's been thousands of employees go through Camcraft over the years, especially over that long. And one of the most consistent thing that I hear from Camcraft employees is how much you loved them, which is very strange, I think, for an employee to say about a boss at first. But you genuinely cared about the people, I think, more than most business owners I've ever met. How did that come natural, or why do people think so highly of your relationship with them?
Yeah, I was reading a story about another owner that was in our business about the same age as me. And the story was written talking about how when he was in the business, he'd be out on the floor walking around, talking to the people, getting to know them. And now it was different. It just didn't happen that way. And it was similar with me. I was not particularly an outgoing person, but the prior owner of the company was a rough dude in many respects. Very great sense of humor, but he could be cutting, and just he didn't give people the time of day that I thought he should. And so when I had the opportunity to begin to run the company, I really got to know the people well, and just you have a natural interest in how they're doing. And I was surprised recently. One of the guys was retiring, a fellow from Eastern Europe was retiring from our company, and he wanted to make sure I'd be there to say goodbye to him. And I thought, why would he do that? But at any rate, he said, I remember when I got to see him and say goodbye. He said, he said, well, you know, when my wife got deported, he was here, he was a citizen, and back then, I don't know what was going on, but his wife and his child had to leave the country and go back to Eastern Europe for a year or two before he could bring him back. And we worked, I tried to get the attorneys involved. And all. He said, I remember you'd be out talking to me all the time about what was going on. And he said, I never forgot that. Wow. And it made me realize, not that I didn't before that, but people want to know that you care. And you just do. I mean, these are great people. I mean, our work staff, I mean, the folks out in the plant most of them start at 6:15 in the morning. They typically work 10-hour days, have great attitudes. And was one of the things in hiring people, and if I didn't hire them, whoever did, I said, they've got to like people. I want people to come here that like other people, because if they don't, we'll never get them on our side. We've got to start with good people. And we have so many like that so when new people come in, they're greeted by the others that have been there and know how they were greeted. And it's made for a great atmosphere in the company. So I don't know. I think people knew I was fair and that I did care. And I always felt like you get away with more if you screw up on something, you know, where you make a decision that may not have been the smartest. People will give you, you know, somebody talked about this like money in the bank. You know, they can draw on that. They know, hey, you wouldn't do this to hurt us. So whatever reason this was done, we'll give you a pass on this. And that paid off. Even when I bought the company and started officially as an owner, one of the first things I did was to put our mission statement together, and that I wasn't sure of how that would be taken by the people, but I knew that the business was given to me by the Lord. And so I put the mission statement together saying, we will glorify God with this business. And I didn't have anybody, maybe some said it behind my back, but I didn't have anybody that came to me and said, what the heck are you talking about? And we set it up, you know, said we're going to run the company by biblical principles, just a lot of things back then that I hope I would still have the guts to do today, but it was just, I knew I had to do it. And that's still a part of the company.
So a lot of people in your shoes would have built this company like you did and sold it. And you've taken a different route. Why did you take a different route?
I never was concerned about taking a lot of money out of the company when I began. I couldn't take any money out. I would like to at the beginning, but I couldn't. But as time went on, my whole thought was, how do we build this into a great company? You know, the books on Jim Collins' books, which all of us read through on how to make your company great and all. I wanted it to be a great company. And I'd been in companies that were really run well and had done well. That had helped me in my role now as an owner. And so we continued to invest heavily over the years. And as I saw our people really getting excited and bringing new people in with great talents that wanted to work in a company that was investing and bringing in the best of equipment, I just was thrilled with all that. And the thought that we could use it for God's purposes, doing Bible studies, we set up a foundation from which we take 10% of the company's profits and put it in there, and we've used that for many charitable endeavors. And so for me, that the company is not something I would want to see sold. It could be in the future for sure if we don't have the next generation coming in the business, but I loved it, and I'm hoping it stays in the family.
Well, so now there's 3 generations that have now worked in the business, which is very cool to think about. What is it like when you start bringing family into the business? Because it can't be easy.
Yeah. Well, it was easier initially with 2 of my sons, Mike and Pat, really wanted to come in the business. Pat had worked for Ping, the golf club company, right out of college, and then had a great manufacturing background. Mike had been in sales before he came to the company, and so he came into sales. And I got to watch them over a period of time develop into really sharp guys that knew what they were doing. So that generation wasn't difficult for me, and it was exciting to see them in the business, and we all got along. We got along well, and the next generation, I'm not quite sure yet what's going to happen. A friend of mine, D. Luce, has got, I think they're in their 6th generation in the company, and wow. That's amazing to be able to do that. But we'll see if the Lord has someone. One of the grandsons already thinks he should be running the company, but he's still in college, so he's got a ways to go. But at any rate, yeah, we're hoping. We got a lot of kids. I mean, a lot of grandkids and great grandkids. So who knows?
What is the process like to have conversations with a family that enter the business to explain that it's part of learning? One of the things I love that you did is you have a lot of family members work outside the company. Why did you do that first? It can become too ingrained. If you can come into the company right out of school, it just seems like, well, that's all I've got to do. I don't have to earn anything. I just come in. And I saw a lot of guys do that where family came in and saw some bad situations. I remember one company, I was on the board of, and they had a number of family members that the previous generation had brought in. The idea of their business was to give our family jobs, which was a terrible thing. And so a couple of them that came in, they eventually got rid of. And my close friend, who was the president of the company, had been the one that had let go some of these that weren't qualified, but they were still stockholders. And we were at a board meeting, and Mark Waltz was his name, was showing that they had finally made profits the last quarter. He was so excited about it because the company had had trouble. And one of his cousins who had been let go commented when he saw the profits. He said, "You know how that hurts me? That hurts me to see those profits and we're getting nothing out of it." I thought, oh boy, you've got to be very careful with who you bring in the company. So we have tried to make the family available for jobs, at least to come in and work, as doing anything, so painting fences, whatever. And then getting them into some other jobs that are a little more qualified, at least to give them a taste for what we do. It's surprising that manufacturing is not an area that a lot of young people want to go into, even in a company that's, modern and got all it's not a dirty, grimy plant. But we haven't seen a lot of the family interested in doing that. Hopefully we'll have a few. That's all we need. Where do you see, and this is broad, but where do you see manufacturing going as a whole? Because you've been on the forefront of manufacturing for the last 40 plus years. Where do you think it's heading? That's a good question. I mean, it's a concern because we don't have enough good people coming into the industry. And a lot of the equipment that's used in all of our manufacturing companies is coming from outside the country. Back after the Second World War, we destroyed everything Japan had and everything Germany had. We still had all of our equipment, so we kept it and kept running the old equipment like Camcraft did. Well, Germany, Japan, and other countries started fresh, and they became the dominant manufacturers of the equipment that we need to make the parts and the machines and everything else we do. So that's a concern, but I'm hoping our new president, with this Making America Great Again, will understand we have to do things here in America. When I think of an Elon Musk, I think, where else in the world could somebody have done what he did? I mean, there's nowhere. He would have had that freedom. He got government backing. But to build companies from nothing, we've got so many that have done it here. So America is a great place to build manufacturing companies if we can get the people and we can get the investments behind it. So we're not dead here, but we certainly aren't where I'd like to see us. Throughout your journey, you've had multiple experiences where you've had to lead through very difficult circumstances and some amazing circumstances as well. One of the things that I think is interesting is you've gone through the process of buying other companies after Camcraft, some good, some bad. Mm-hmm. What was the process like of buying something and having it not work out, and then vice versa, buying something and having it work out? We looked at tons of companies because we weren't sure whether our industry was going to have enough opportunities for us. And
I can't tell you how many companies we probably looked at over that period of time. And in terms of buying companies, I don't recall, other than years ago, we bought some companies that were just, we hadn't paid enough attention to what we were doing, wound up with poor leadership in the companies, and that didn't work. The latest one, Matrix, which is the automation company, even when we bought it, our board, I remember them saying, it's a different kind of company than Camcraft. It's a company where you have to continually get new customers. With Camcraft, if we get in on building components for an engine, that engine just keeps getting built and built and built. We keep providing. Well, automation systems, you build one or 10 and then they're done. You got to find another customer. So that's been a challenge. And one, maybe we didn't see coming at the extent it could come, but that, I think we did a lot of work. We knew what we were getting into in terms of the people there, their qualifications. They had done a lot of business for Camcraft, so we knew it was a good company. Would we do that one again? You'll have to ask Pat, my son, who's running it. I'm not sure.
You've helped so many people throughout the year become better leaders. And one of the things I love about you personally is that you are a true servant leader. How do you help instill that servant leadership mentality to other people?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, I've learned it from a number of people that I've watched. I heard you ask somebody else a question about who, servant leaders that you've known and you've liked. And, two people come to mind. One is your dad, and the other one is another fellow that I met at NCS, Randy Carey. Two guys that just go out of their way. Your dad had said years ago when we first met, he said, I feel like one of my jobs is to help the Bertsche family. And he didn't just mean it in the business. I mean, he got his son married to my granddaughter. I don't know how he did that, but he had a lot to do with just staying involved with us. But and he does that with our group. I mean, he really has that heart, even with you, working with you. Randy Carey, maybe his military background helped him to become that, but just a guy that's unusual in terms of what he will do for people and the things he's done for Jeannie and for me over the years. So I've learned a lot from other guys. I'm learning more now as my wife goes through this period of time where I have to be much more engaged than I used to be, where I'm serving her a lot more than she's serving me. And, but I mean, it's something that the Lord takes you through. And, my wife has the joy of the Lord, which gives me that joy of the Lord. So I think it is, hopefully I've influenced others, and I hope in our family, I've seen them do an awful lot of things that probably I wouldn't have done at their age, good things that have shown that they certainly have servants' hearts. Yeah.
It's funny because a lot of the stuff that has stemmed from Camcraft has really impacted people around the world in positive ways now when we look back at some of the impact you've had. Talk about the story of starting Crossroads and what that was like, and explain what Crossroads is just for our audience listening.
Yeah. Well, Crossroads Kids Club is a after-school, basically almost after-school program for kids in the public schools. And we go into the schools through the churches that we're able to enlist, bringing their own volunteers into the schools. And we have a curriculum we put together, a Bible study and small group time and a time of just game playing about an hour and a half after school. And we now, I think, are in 100 different schools, or at least have 100 clubs. Some of them aren't in schools that are in places like Africa or Central America. But we started it through some unusual circumstances. I mentioned we built the building in Hanover Park in 1994. And we move in, and the building next door was larger than ours, but hadn't been moved into yet. And there was graffiti on the walls of that building on two sides at the corner. Well, we'd moved out of Franklin Park, which was a good place to move out of, and it wasn't one that I would have, I would have expected something there, but didn't expect in Hanover Park. And it turned out, after talking to some people, apparently there were two gangs. One gang had its writings on one side and the other gang on the other side. And so I had said flippantly that I was going to put somebody up on the roof with a shotgun, and if anybody touched our building, they were going to get buckshot. Well, it turned out there was a DARE officer, which was prominent back then, who was working at one of the local schools, and or he was involved there. And he came over to talk to me about the shotgun and about possibly working with us. And that led us to beginning a partnership with this Parkwood school, which was in our area. And so we started bringing kids over. We'd bus them into Camcraft once a week. And we got maybe 15, 20 of our people that would volunteer to sit with the kids, with 2 or 3 kids, and just spend time over lunch with them talking about, it wasn't anything religious. It was basically, we would be making little cars with them to race, or we'd be even teaching them blueprints or anything we could do with the kids, just to give them an idea what it was like in a business, get them close to people that were out in the business world. And it was really a really interesting, good time. And after we were doing that for about a year, I was involved with it. One of the little girls that was part of my group, who was the holy terror, she was maybe 4'3", but she was tough as nails. And I think her background was the reason why. And she would fight the boys, and I mean, if she needed to. But at any rate, at Christmas that year, she brought me, I've got it in our closet, she brought me a white stuffed animal, and it was so loving that she gave me this. I mean, I didn't cry at the moment, but I was just touched, because she wasn't that kind of a kid, but I knew that her home life wasn't all that good. And so at any rate, that really got me thinking, we've got to be doing more than just this at the school. So I thought, well, let's do a spring vacation Bible study, Bible school. And the church across the street from us, Evangel, allowed us to use their gymnasium. And so I offered it to all the kids in the class at Parkwood, and asked our people if they'd come over for that week, because kids were off school, and just we did Veggie Tales and sat with the kids, and our people had their Bibles out, and it was so exciting. And all the kids showed up, and we had lunch for them. And so when that was over, I just thought, Lord, there's got to be more that we can do. And so I had one of the fellows, Paul Munson, who was working for me at the time, and I asked Paul, I said, let's look into this. What more could we do? And so he started to think about things, very creative guy. And one of the fellows at work suggested that he knew a young man that might be interested in leading this group if we were really going to put something together. His name was Matt Armstrong. Matt was a school teacher at the time and had a background, was bilingual. And so I talked to Matt, and it was just something about him. I mean, he was excited about what we were going to do. And I said, well, what I'd like to do is to start a club over at Parkwood. If we can get into Parkwood, and they'll let us come in after school, and we'll find the volunteers either from our company or from wherever. And so we did that. We started at that first club at Parkwood, and I was a part of it. He was a leader, and that's how it all started.
Wow. And now it's decades later, and there's been thousands of kids impacted by what was just an idea at the time to help stop graffiti on your own building.
Right.
What's it like to see that transformation?
Yeah, seeing, and Matt Armstrong is still leading it, and he's got a number of great people working for him. It's again, when I look at people at Camcraft that have come in that I've had a part in bringing in, I'm so amazed. And Matt, I mean, people look at him and he came from, I can remember, maybe he won't see this, but I can remember when he was first with us and he'd speak in public, I would get nervous because you know how that is with people. You're not sure how it's going to come off. Well, he is so good now. I mean, whether it's on YouTube or whether it's speaking at dinners, I mean, in so many ways, just a great young man. He's now in his 50s, just 50. At any rate, so I'm I am thrilled when I get stories all the time about kids that have come to the Lord, or not only kids, their families have come to the Lord. They've joined the churches. I mean, so much happening. And now we're seeing it even in Ghana. There's some of the folks were just there last week, and they're just places you'd never expect. But the Lord's opened up opportunities. Matt's followed them. And so we've seen a great move in Mexico and El Salvador, Honduras. And it's just, it's been amazing.
Part of being a great servant leader, I often think, is about leaving a legacy behind you where people are better because of something you've done or taught them or just shown them. When you think of legacy, what comes to mind with the legacy you're leaving and Jeannie's leaving?
What I think about mostly is generosity. I think that's something that I've really felt that my kids know that we want to be generous. I've seen them be extremely generous, and because the Lord's blessed us in ways that I never expected, I have been able to be involved in people's lives that it really has made a difference. Jeannie will say once in a while, be watching something like, the dogs that need money or, whatever. Oh, there's so many out there at $19 a month now. You'd be broke if you followed all of those. But she'll say, I want to give money to them. I give money to the church, but the church, they don't need it. These people need it. So I haven't given to the dogs yet, but there's a lot of people in need. And to be around them and feel like you can make a difference is just, that's a blessing from the Lord. So that's probably one of the great things that I've been able to do and able to show our own family and even those that we've given to. I mean, I've had letters from people saying, boy, what you've been able to do for us, someday I'm going to be able to do that for somebody else.
Do you think generosity is something that can be learned by people, or is it just something you are generous or you're not?
No, I think it starts with being willing to give to the Lord. I mean, when we were new believers, I remember being spoken to by two of the members of the church. It happened to be a husband and wife. We're both school teachers as I recall, they didn't have any kids yet. And they were explaining to us how we could tithe in the church. Well, I was in my early 30s at the time. We're raising 5 kids. I'm thinking, you have no idea how maybe you can tithe, but I can't do that. And it like with most people, it took time to trust the Lord and see that this, it can happen. The Lord does give back to you threefold, sevenfold of what you've given. And so for me, it started there where the money wasn't mine. You don't feel like it's yours to hold on to. And so I think that started it. And then just feeling better about giving it than you do spending it on yourself. If it can get to that point, and I think we spend enough on ourselves, but it sure is fun to be able to give it.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've seen so many groups, whether it be companies, podcasts, or churches or whatever, highlight your story and talk about Camcraft and talk about you and talk about the extreme generosity that flows. And it's been a great teaching opportunity for a lot of people about what it looks like to steward well and be generous. Yeah. When you think through, you've got all these generations moving into the business. You've got a large family. I'll put it that way. A very large family. What do you hope from a family standpoint you're instilling in your kids, in your grandkids, and your great grandkids, all of that?
Well, certainly that there isn't a love of money. One of the things I talk to the kids about, the grandkids, excuse me, is that you don't go after a job because you're going to make a lot of money in it. If it's an area you enjoy, then let's go at it. But I never thought about making a great deal of money in our company, and never expected to. But I love what I did, and I've seen others in our family that are doing that. They love what they're doing. They're not interested in making a lot of money. I think it's that the generosity side. I've given the kids, and at times in the past, given the kids money at Christmas to give away. And I've seen some of them just ready to give it away, and others, well, I don't know where to give it. And I realize that, you need to understand that. You need to look at things. You need to think about people. It could be an individual. It could be an organization. But if you don't get out of yourself, you don't really think about passing it along to somebody else. So some of those things, I think, and I'm sure I need to do more. We have shared with the family where we have given through our foundation and some of the other things. And the kids have asked me, why do you give it there? Or why do you get it? And that's good. I mean, understand what it is we've seen in these ministries. One of the things I've learned some years ago was I have to know the people that we're giving to. I don't mean individuals. They may be in a ministry, but I want to know who it is I'm giving to directly that is using that money in their ministry. And I want to have good accounting practices within the companies. And so those are things I can teach the kids.
Yeah. Another thing that I've noticed that you're teaching people and going through yourself over the last little over a decade is the importance of friendship. Talk about how the importance of friendship has played out in your life, especially in the last 15 years.
I realized at Camcraft that I had a lot of friends, but the friends were more with people that maybe because I was leading the company, it was, it's a different kind of a friendship than it would be a real friendship. And I enjoyed the people, love the people. But I realized the men friends that I had were more related to my own family than they were beyond that. And so a friend of mine who had moved to Winston-Salem had mentioned to me the New Canaan Society, and that got me interested. I went down and visited him and saw 150 men coming together once a week, listening to a speaker and really getting to know one another. I mean, the point of NCS was to get to know and love other men and through that to love Jesus more. And I thought, wow, that really makes a lot of sense. And so I brought it back up here with a group of men, including your dad, and I just said, hey, give me 3 months and let's see if we can do this. We'll bring a speaker in every other week. We can be the speakers initially. And it's been an incredible journey for me where most of my friends now are guys with NCS. I mean, it takes, I shouldn't say takes over your life, but you have so many connections and with good guys. And it's not just accountability, which I don't even care for that word particularly. I think it's more genuine friendship with guys that you really care about, that you're texting with, you're seeing, you're praying with, you're having parties with, and that has changed my life in many ways, knowing how to, you see how other people live. You see how other guys are dealing with issues beyond your own little circle. And that's important. Where you can be praying with other guys or just seeing great things happening within their families.
It feels like sometimes it's hard to build friendships because of that, the agenda that some people might have in building a friendship. I've noticed that you don't even think about it that way, or it feels like you don't think about it that way. You're just willing to be friends with whoever and get close to them. How do you think you get over that barrier? And as people listen, how can they get over those barriers of the wondering about agendas and things like that?
I think with, at least with our group, with NCS, we don't have it's not a networking group. I've gotten caught in situations I wish I wasn't, for sure. But you learn pretty quickly, where you don't want to go. But I think, we're all made in the image of God. You hear that and you think, oh yeah, right. But it's true. And it's something I have to remember at times where I might have a difficult relationship. But I have not, I've always felt in the business or wherever, I'm an average guy. I'm ordinary. I'm a regular guy. And so why wouldn't I be regular and ordinary with everybody else? People don't look, I know some people don't look at me that way because maybe I've got more money or I've got a business, all that. But you know yourself, you know what, you're nothing special, right? So.
Okay, well, this has been awesome. I want to ask you 10 rapid fire questions where you just say the first thing that comes to your mind and there's no right or wrong answer. But who is the first person you think of when I say servant leadership?
Well, Jesus certainly in in thinking of someone who gave everything. I'd mentioned before your dad, Randy Carey. Those are a couple of people, real live people that I think of as great servants.
5 words that most describe you.
Ordinary was one I just said. Generous, hospitable, caring, empathetic. That's 5.
Yeah,
I
that's
think.
good. All right, favorite author or book?
C.S. Lewis probably would be my favorite author. So many books that he wrote. Also Josh McDowell. I think of a favorite book. Evidence Demands a Verdict was a book that really got me past that point of is there a God or not. When my wife came to the Lord, I didn't know which end was up. And Evidence Demands a Verdict really, the Lord used that to bring me to, yeah, there is a God. The Bible is true. It's real. So that's a couple of them there.
All right, favorite movie?
Schindler's List, probably, because of our interest. We've been to Israel many times and, a love for the Jewish people in Israel. So that movie really, I think a lot about that.
Favorite food?
Pizza, probably.
All right, favorite thing to do in your free time?
I'd say golf, but after the week I had last week, I think that's gone now. I enjoy just in the quiet reading a good book.
Okay. What's a surprising fact about you?
I didn't cry for 20 years.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't expect
It wasn't
that.
the most recent 20.
Yeah. All right. Where's your favorite place you've ever been?
We really love Hawaii, the big island we've spent a lot of time on. We've been around Hawaii, different islands. But I think if there were one place I'd want to go back to, it would probably be Hawaii.
Where's some place that you'd like to go that you have not been?
New Zealand. I've just been watching some series on New Zealand. I'd really love to see New Zealand.
All right. And finally, what's the best advice you've ever gotten?
That's interesting because I went through a series. It was a seminar, but it was a series on business by the book. And the leader of that, this is before I bought the company, and it really had an impact on me. He said, one thing I tell all you guys out there is never have a partner in your business, and particularly don't have a Christian partner. I thought, what? This was a Christian guy speaking. And that, I had a number of guys when I was going to buy Camcraft, not a number, but some guys came to me and wanted to invest with me. And I just kept thinking about, I'm not sure I know what I'm going to do in the business. And I don't want to have to deal with somebody else explaining it. And so I didn't, and the Lord let me buy it on my own. And so that was certainly good advice.
That's great advice. Well, thank you for being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I'm excited for our audience to have heard from you and learn about your journey in Camcraft and be inspired by you.
Well, I hope it was. I hope that, I enjoyed it and you kept the questions reasonable. I appreciate that, Chris.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Servant Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to never miss an update. Be sure to check out the servantleadershippodcast.org for more updates and additional bonus content.